Hello everyone. Today is going to be a quick one. It is me, Jonathan Rizal, and now I'm going to be talking about nasionalisme di Asia. If you remember our previous video, we talked about nasionalisme di Barat, and we talked about what it means to be nasionalisme, which is all about fighting for your negara and your bangsa. Okay, so today I'm going to go a little bit slower now. So with as little time as I possibly can, we're going to discuss about nasionalisme di Asia. We're going to give you an overview, and then we're going to explain all about India. Okay, just one country today. We have four countries in total, which is India, China, Japan, and finally all the way in Empire Uthmaniyah, all the way in Egypt, the Mesir. So first of all, before we jump in, you have to know what is the difference between nasionalisme di Asia versus with what we previously learned, which is in Barat with the countries America, Perancis, and England. So the biggest difference I would say is nasionalisme di Asia merupakan kesinambungan idea nasionalisme di Barat. That means that the nationalism in Asia, it is a continuation of Barat. So Barat is the first, then comes Asia. Alright, dan kesan daripada pertumbungan dengan Eropah, and it all happens because of the way Eropah pertumbungan, that means it like crashes into it, 碰撞, the meeting point to where they intersect, the intersection between the Eropah dengan Asia. So we can dissect this into four different ways. Is it for three different ways? Sorry. Why was nationalism happening? We always know it's because someone was PMO'd. Someone was very PMO lah, PETO. So what happened was we have the first reason, penjajahan. Penjajah is alright. Which is what we're going to talk about today with India. India is a case where they were colonized, thus they were mad. That's not a face of someone who's mad. They were mad. And thus, nationalism happened in their country. It occurred. Then we have pemerintahan raja, and we have opposite scenarios. See, we have a positive one, which is in Japan, where the king is responsible for the nationalism. So where we can say, pemulihan Japan, the restoration of Japan, digerakkan oleh pemerintah Japan, which is your Maharaja Meiji, Mikado Meiji, your Meiji restoration. Some of you might have heard it before. Then at the same time, another kind of nationalism which was caused by the king, but for the bad reasons, a negative side, was in China, Kelemahan dynasty Manchu, because their king, in this case, their what do we call it? Their Huangdi, their punya emperor, wasn't that great. Kelemahan was pretty weak. Thus, the people decided to fight for themselves. Alright, then we move on to our final one, which is mempertahankan agama Islam. I'm going to draw a moon and a star to show agama Islam. Mempertahankan agama Islam. So the reason here is agama, which is formed in nasionalisme Empire Uthmaniyah dan Mesir, Egypt. This is all about the Gerakan Islam, and we will learn about these two in a different video. For now, we're going to focus on the penjajahan. So first, let's explain. Alright, penjajahan. Who was colonizing India? It should be no surprise. It was one of the Barat countries we already learned about in our previous video. So it was England, or in this case, we call them as British. So imperialisme British. So what happened? What was the starting point? The first crack, we could say. Well, the faktor ataupun sebab tercetusnya nasionalisme di India was because penentangan terhadap dasar imperialisme British. The people, reaksi penduduk tempatan terhadap dasar imperialisme British. They were fighting against, rebelling against their imperialism. Give me a second. Okay, sorry, I had to check with the camera. Now, coming back here, caused by the imperialism of British. So what happened? Well, awalnya gerakan perhatian terhadap isu sosio-agama, all about how the way the social life and agama put a play into the imperialism. So what happened? Menggiatkan kecintaan kepada budaya tempatan. Giatkan means to increase, to strengthen, to 增加. So, kecintaan, the love towards the local culture, budaya. So, after this happened, after the British PMO the people through issues of socio-agama. What happened was at abad ke-19 munculnya golongan intellectual. That means we had some smart individuals. Let me get rid of these other two for a second. Golongan intellectual, people who are educated. Alright. What kind of education, you might be asking? Let me give them some glasses and a book. There you go. Golongan intellectual, munculnya golongan intellectual disebabkan oleh perkembangan pendidikan barat. So when we talk about intellectuals, we're referring to the we can say Western education, which was known to be a lot more lengkap, more sempurna, more perfect compared to local education. Alright, so that's why the word intellectual, you can think of it, intellectual is already a word from English. So this is golongan intellectual daripada perkembangan, the expansion of pendidikan di barat, in the western side. Then the next century, the 20th century, abad ke-20, gerakan bersifat keras diketuai oleh nasionalis radikal. So bersifat keras means they had their own movement, which is very rough and aggressive, which we know that was pretty much not successful because, well, anything rough and aggressive, it did not lead to India being its own country, being free from the British, so you might assume it was a total flop. See, nationalist radical means the nationalist, or someone who believes in nationalism. Radical means they had very not to say they weren't aggressive in a sense, they had very wild thoughts in the sense that they were very modern, they were very brave, very bold thoughts. You can think of it like that. And semangat penentangan secara militan, they were fighting like physical fighting, like militant, like with their guns, the military and stuff like that. That was the way they were going against the British, terhadap British, and you can imagine how that played out. The British were not having it, and plus the British are a lot more equipped, right? Then we can explain after this, right? So the first one we talked about was isu sosial agama. Then we said isu sosial agama. Then munculnya golongan intellectual. Then nationalist radical. They were fighting secara bersifat keras, dia punya movement, secara militan. Then finally, the fifth stage, which is closer to when India gets their own independence, is after World War I. Selepas Perang Dunia Pertama, DASA tidak bekerjasama dengan British. The people, DASA is the people, we can think of it like that. The people of India, there you go. The people of India did not bekerjasama, did not work together with the British any longer. Menjadikan satyagraha. This is the special word here. Can I write it somewhere? Satyagraha, right here. Satyagraha. Okay, Satyagraha sebagai pegangan is the way they held on to their nationalism, untuk menggerakkan nationalism. So this is the overview of what happened in India. But now let's get into the details, shall we? So what really happened? Well, the first thing you should know, there was a group called the Dahagi India. And over there, pemberontakan sepoi British berbangsa India. Sepoi over here means dia punya tentera. So the tenteras, they were rebelling against the British. How? Disebabkan ancaman British terhadap adat, budaya dan agama tempatan. That was all we were talking about. The issue social agama started here with the Dahagi India. They were fighting against the British because what? The British had attacked their adat, their punya traditions, their culture, and the local religion. Okay? So then we move on to, we can call the second stage, which is Brahmo, with two people, Brahmo Samaj dan Arya Samaj ditubuhkan. So in your textbook, it says merupakan pertubuhan penting yang menggiatkan rasa kecintaan kepada kebudayaan tempatan, to the local culture. Is directly related to the social agama issue we talked about, because the British were attacking the adat, budaya, agama tempatan, thus caused there to be these two groups, we can say, formed. Pahoy, Brahmo Samaj dan Arya Samaj. Then we move on to our golongan intellectual. So what did our intellectuals do? Well, gerakan yang lebih tersusun. Because they are intellectuals, because they have studied and specifically have Western studying, they know that in order to achieve independence, it is not through fighting or outright rebelling. It is something, you have to have something more organized. So, Gerakan Lebih Tersusun is a more organized movement yang menubuhkan parti politik untuk menyuarakan pandangan seperti INC dan Liga Muslim. INC is called the Indian National Congress, while the Liga Muslim is for all the Muslim people in India. Okay, so their movement was a lot more organized compared to the social agama thing that happened with the Sepoy British. Okay, yang berbangsa India. Then we move on to where we talk about the gerakan keras diketuai oleh nasionalis radikal, which we talked about right secara militan. So what happened? Seperti Bal Gangadhar Tilak dan Bipin Chandrapal. Sorry if I'm not saying these names with the correct pronunciation. So what did these two lads do? See, penentangan secara militan terhadap British. It's okay, you can kind of go through this. So they basically fought the British secara militan. They don't give you many details about it. So moving on, then we talk about selepas Perang Dunia Pertama. I should put down World War I. This is where the Satyagraha comes in, alright? So, selepas World War I, INC diketuai oleh Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi is a very well-known figure and you should go research him on your own to understand more about him, but just know he's a very legendary person. Now, INC is the Indian National Congress. So, what happened? Mereka melaksanakan dasar tidak bekerjasama dengan British. Tindakan ini diterajui oleh Mahatma Gandhi and again menjadikan Satyagraha sebagai pegangan pada kebenaran. They were holding on. This is the truth. Satyagraha means like the 真相的原理, the principle where they were holding on to the truth. They're showing the world that, hey, the British are not good guys. Because after the World War I, though the British stopped World War I, was on the winning side, it was all in all pretty good for the British. And India, with Mahatma Gandhi and the INC, were trying to prove that this is what's really happening. They are colonizing in countries like us, India, and they were holding on to this truth, pada kebenaran. Then, selepas Perang Dunia Kedua, the Second World War, right? World War II, INC dan Liga Muslim membentuk jawatan kuasa khas merangka pembahagian India. INC, the Indian National Congress, and Liga Muslim, which we talk about it, the Muslim League, membentuk. They have built jawatan kuasa positions, or you can say government places, you can call it like that. Khas, so general places untuk merangka to estimate the division of India. Because you see, INC berjaya mengisytiharkan India merdeka. INC, the Indian National Congress, was successful in announcing that, hey, we are free. One thing I want you all to notice, I'm going to rub this off really quick. See, if you remember anything from Revolusi America, you would know that, Thomas Jefferson, whatever, the perisytiharan, there was a term used, token, right? Perisytiharan. Kemerdekaan Amerika. Alright, notice that the word they use is perisytiharan and over here mengisytiharkan. That is the key word you should know. That for talking about merdeka, we always use the ishtihar word. So, INC berjaya mengisytiharkan India merdeka dan their punya Perdana Menteri, which is their Prime Minister, was Jawaharlal Nehru. Okay? Then on the other side, this is for INC, right? The Indian National Congress. What about the Liga Muslim? Mengisytiharkan Pakistan merdeka. That's why Pakistan and India are separate countries. Alright. And their punya Governor General was Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Then finally, we can talk about what this managed to achieve. What this managed to achieve. Dia punya kejayaan. So on the 14th of August, 14 Ogos 1947, ataupun 1947 Pakistan diisytiharkan, again isytihar negara merdeka. And then on the 15th of August, which is a day after, India diisytiharkan sebagai negara yang merdeka. So, before we end, this is all about India. We're going to do a small recap, right? I think India is fine. It's not that important. The moving on countries like China and Japan are more likely to come up. And also Gerakan Islam, right? All about that agama things in the Empire of Mania and Mesir might be more important, but still we should understand what's going on so you don't have to memorize everything. We can also give you the meaning, right? What satyagraha means. Satyagraha means berpegang teguh kepada kebenaran. You're holding very close, very tightly towards the truth. Konsep satyagraha menjadi asas perjuangan tanpa keganasan. The concept of satyagraha was the building blocks, kind of the key, the asas to having their merdeka, to fight for their independence, kemerdekaan, perjuangan kemerdekaan tanpa keganasan, without any sort of violence. Okay, so let's do a recap, shall we? Nasionalisme di India was all about the penjajahan, the imperialisme British di India. And we had kind of 5 important things, which is number 1, penentangan terhadap dasar imperialisme British. Number 2, awalnya what happened? Gerakan perhatian terhadap isu sosial agama. That's what really pissed them off at first. And that's why we had, dahaga India, pemberontakan sepoi tentera terhadap, because the British had attacked ancaman adat, budaya, agama, tempatan. Okay? Then we had more things. Example, menggiat the Brahmo Samaj dan Arya Samaj ditubuhkan to menggiatkan, to really strengthen up the love, rasa kecintaan kepada budaya tempatan ataupun kebudayaan tempatan. Then we had our golongan intellectual. Should have kept a drawing. Golongan intellectual that was all about fighting. It was all about having political parties, parti politik, INC and Liga Muslim. Here's an recap. INC mengisytiharkan kemerdekaan siapa? India. While Liga Muslim mengisytiharkan kemerdekaan Pakistan. So moving onwards, we had on the 20th century gerakan bersifat keras dikuasai oleh nationalist radical and penentangan secara militan. Then selepas World War I, we had INC. We're talking about how we will not work together with the British. Dasar tidak bekerjasama dengan British. And oleh itu, Satyagraha was formed. Who was in charge of all this? The INC ketua. Who is INC's punya ketua? Mahatma Gandhi. Okay? So, that is all. Then on World War II, on the 14th of August, Pakistan, which was part of the party politic Liga Muslim, was merdeka. Then for the 15th of August, India was merdeka. India was free, independent, under the party politic of INC, Indian National Congress. And that is all for a small overcap of India's punya nationalism. Maybe I should wrote India here. Okay, thank you so much. I will see you for the next few countries.